One of the big issues is the economy in Arizona as it grows across the country, and then tariffs being implemented. What will that do? Joining us is Glenn Hammer from the Arizona Chambers of Commerce. I appreciate you doing this again.
Thanks for having me back on the show, Mike.
This issue, you've been so supportive of the tax cuts that the president wanted and they put in place. But you're not so happy necessarily about the tariffs.
Well, the tax cuts were truly a once-in-a-generation type tax cut, a huge deal. I mean, every company in the state of Arizona is benefiting one way or another. Their corporate tax rate has gone down, or if you're filing under the individual income tax, your taxes have gone down, or you're buying equipment, your taxes have gone down.
Big and small companies.
Big and small, any sector. I mean, it is the news. It just keeps on getting better. I mean, we have utilities saying that they're cutting the bills because they're able to pass along the tax savings. We have so many companies across the valley that are giving bonuses and raises. This is great for workers. It's great for our economy. The regulatory reform work of this administration and the Congress has been probably the best in the last 30 or 40 years. So you pair what's been happening in tax reform, tax cuts, and regulatory rollbacks, unnecessary regulations, and what do you have? You have an economy that is really accelerating.
So the premise for the tax cuts was we were going to grow our way out of debt, expand the economy and grow. But isn't there a concern that if the tariffs start a trade war, that it drags down what is that growing economy that we need to pay off the debt that we have?
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, what both the tax cuts and the regulatory reform actions have done is it's made the United States a lot more attractive place to do business and invest. I mean, we haven't been this attractive as a country in decades, really since the Reagan years. So this is the time where the U.S. should, if anything, be going in the other direction, opening up new markets. Because let's remember, Mike, 95% of the world's consumers live outside the United States. And with the tax cuts and the regulatory reform, we've created a situation here where the U.S. can really compete with anyone.
So then, if the president's been, this is where I was torn, because you're a lot more savvy when it comes to business than I am, which is why you're here.
No, I wouldn't.
But the president has been right on issues of the economy so far, and he believes that these tariffs are the right thing to do across the board. Where do you think maybe he's wrong?
Well, the issue on tariffs is that, let's take steel and aluminum. So we have about 140,000 people in the business in the United States of manufacturing steel and aluminum. That's a nice number of people. Very few in Arizona. I mean, this is more the Midwest. Here's the thing, Mike. We have 6.5 million people basically employed in industries that use steel and aluminum. So for all of those companies, overnight, the prices go up, and that means it's more expensive to build. And for a state like Arizona, we're going to feel the pain. I can't say how much, but it's not positive. And the other point here, and this is the broader concern, is we don't want to see a trade war.
Right.
I mean, the last time, I don't want to say what the worst case scenario is really bad. When you start getting into these trade wars, you don't know what will be targeted. It creates incredible uncertainty. And here we are in Arizona. We are at an all-time high in terms of employment. Our economy is accelerating. If we're able to navigate these trade and tariff issues well, Mike, I would expect that for the next many years to come, we're just going to have more prosperity in the state. And
looking into this in the businesses and the industries that are concerned about just the steel and aluminum, it's not just it's not people that are erecting buildings. I heard the craft brewing industry is saying the aluminum cans that they put beer in, and then the equipment that they use to brew the beer becomes more expensive. That as an industry, their prices are going to be going up. I never thought of it that way, but there are so many industries we wouldn't think that would be affected by this that are immediately.
Well, for Joe's Six-Pack, it will mean that the cost of beer has gone up, and that's problematic for me. I enjoy good beer.
Right.
And in fact, there was a story of a great American company. I believe it's called the American Keg Company, that uses a lot of steel, that had to announce layoffs of about 1/3 of its workforce. It was covered in the Wall Street Journal because of the higher prices of steel. Look, there are instances of unfair trade practices, and the Trump administration has rightly identified that we have a real problem with China. But here's the thing. China, we are only getting about 5% or so of our steel and aluminum from China. The countries where we're importing most of the steel and aluminum are friends, like Mexico, like Canada, like South Korea, like Australia, and countries from the EU. So, if there's an issue with China, let's work with our trading partners and find a fair remedy. But we just believe that a broad tariff, and to the administration's credit, they do seem to be dialing it back. But generally speaking, broad tariffs are really, they're taxes and are bad for consumers and business.
Well, because in the end, if we do start that trade war, the EU talked about doing something about it. The president said we will then put a tariff on the vehicles you import, and the next thing you know, there's other industries, and we end up fighting over these things instead of growing together.
Well, for an example, the EU has threatened maybe they'll look at Harley-Davidson in Wisconsin, or they'll look at Kentucky bourbon. They're very strategic when you start getting into these situations. And our feeling is, look, we do well when we trade more, when we're reducing barriers, we're going to win. The United States of America there's no country that the United States of America should fear when it comes to trading. We make the best products. We have the best people making the products. We want to expand those opportunities. We want to get into the markets representing 95% of the world. And where there are barriers, let's focus and in a smart way work to remove those barriers so we can sell our goods.
That's why he's here. He's the expert. Glenn Hammer, CEO and President of the Arizona Chambers of Commerce. I appreciate you coming down and talking about this.
Thanks for having me back on the show, Mike.
We'll be back.